This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The DRC declares an end to an Ebola outbreak reported in October. Confusion reigns over the fate of Libya's election just 7 days to the crucial vote. And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson rules out another lockdown as coronavirus cases surge. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment, but first, here's Rama Nyang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the next half hour. International airlines flying into Ghana risk fines of thousands of dollars for allowing unvaccinated passengers on board. And Tanzania's government has signed a range of joint venture agreements with Australian mining firms. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. Well, let's begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where authorities have declared the end of an Ebola outbreak. The outbreak emerged in early October in North Kivu province and infected 11 people, killing 6 of them. Congo declared its 13th outbreak of the disease on October the 8th in Beni, in the east of the country. The announcement prompted fears of a repeat of the 2018 to 2020 epidemic that killed nearly 2,300 people. This was the second highest toll recorded in the history of the disease. The virus was first discovered near the Ebola River in 1976. Well, let's get more on this development and cross over to Chris Ochamringa. He's joining me live from Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Chris, good news there coming out of the DRC. Tell us more about this.
Well, it's certainly good news from the DRC amidst all the depressing stories from this country. The Health Minister, Dr. Jean-Jacques Mungani, made the announcement today, the end of the 13th Ebola outbreak in the eastern province of North Kivu, in Beni's territory in particular. And this news sparked a lot of excitement from the Congolese citizens and officials from international organizations that have been supporting the government to deal with this outbreak. There were 11 cases that were reported and 6 people who died, and many of the health minister told the people in Beni to be very vigilant because scientists have reported that, sporadic cases normally occur in areas where there was a major outbreak. This outbreak was the second this year and the third since 2018, which was the worst outbreak in the DRC, which claimed about 2,300 lives. And so people in that area are working with international organizations to ensure that there's surveillance so that there's no other outbreak anytime soon. Beatrice?
Well, Chris, it's just about 2 months since the outbreak was declared, and that happening as a global pandemic was raging. How did health authorities manage to fight the virus within a short time?
Well, Beatrice, first of all, the DRC, this being the 13th Ebola outbreak in this country, the DRC has developed some expertise in dealing with Ebola. There are a number of Congolese health workers who have learned how to carry out the control and prevention of infection, conduct safe and dignified burials, contact tracing, and a number of other issues that are very critical in containing Ebola. The international organizations have also been here. They have sent staff, experts, and medical supplies and funding, which was critical in containing this outbreak. This country has also, the scientists have also developed a vaccine, an Ebola vaccine known as Iverbo. It was recently licensed and it proved very effective in dealing with Ebola. That also played a very crucial role in containing this outbreak in a very short period. And then there's also the issue of the community engagement. In 2018, when the worst outbreak so far happened in the DRC, there was a lot of hostility towards health workers by the local community. Many people refused to follow the health advice of experts, and so there was a lot of deaths were reported. But this time round, there was a lot of information campaigns, and people were cooperative with the health workers, and they accepted to take the vaccine, and that is why we have seen, a reduction in the number of cases. 6 cases were reported. That, of course, is still unfortunate, but it was much less compared to 2018, where nearly 2,300 people died. And so there is also a campaign by international organizations to, stockpile vaccines. They have been placed in Switzerland, and they will be dispatched to countries where outbreaks happen, often like the DRC, very quickly, so that in case there's another outbreak of Ebola, people get the medicines that they need very urgently so that they contain the disease. Beatrice?
All right, Chris Ochamringa joining us there from Kinshasa. Thank you. A high court in South Africa has ruled that a decision to place former President Jacob Zuma on medical parole was unlawful and ordered that he should return to jail. Zuma and the former National Commissioner of Correctional Services, Arthur Fraser, were ordered to pay the costs of the medical parole challenge. Angela Coppola has more on the latest developments.
79-year-old Zuma was jailed in July for contempt of court for refusing to attend and give evidence at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into state capture.
I think the ruling was rather a cruel ruling. It was very vindictive, almost satanic, if you like, because here you have a ruling that firstly even forgets that the correctional services is on record in being unable to deal with the kind of illnesses that President Zuma has.
Not everyone is surprised by the ruling.
It's really not surprising that the High Court declared it invalid. What I found interesting is that the court said, well, in this case, the only way really to fix the problem is to send the former president back to prison and to make sure that this time that he got out for free, so to speak, that doesn't count towards his sentence, which is quite a strong message, I think, from the court.
An appeal against the ruling was lodged within hours. Several grounds were cited.
Now, for a judge that has got no medical background to come and make a decision to say this medical report on this side is better than the medical report on the other side, and therefore this one must win the day, is in itself out of order, because judges are not medical people.
There have been allegations that the former president still has many friends in government, including the Commissioner of Correctional Services, Arthur Fraser, the man who had Zuma released.
And I think the judgment shows how the doctors and the head of the prisons really did everything they could to make sure that the former president gets released from prison for reasons that the law does not allow for.
Should the appeal fail, the foundation will continue seeking justice for their patron.
So we are not about to stop here. We first have to die first before we stop. So we'll push with everything we have to make sure that we exploit all available legal remedies to ensure that President Zuma gets the justice that it deserves.
While the court has ruled, it's the appeal process that's now going to slow the process down or speed it up, depending on how urgent the matter is considered. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
To Libya now, and confusion marks the fate of the December 24th election, just 7 days to the vote. The presidential election hangs in the balance, with an electoral official saying it will now be impossible to hold the poll on time. The vote was meant to help end Libya's past decade of chaos. This was to be achieved by installing a political leadership with national legitimacy after years of factional divisions. The process has, however, been dogged by bitter disputes over the legal basis and fundamental rules of the poll. Well, Libya's Election Commission has delayed the announcement of the final list of presidential candidates until some court cases are resolved. Appeals against some presidential candidates and the election law have been filed in Libyan courts. This means the list of candidates for the 24th December election cannot be prepared until final verdicts are reached in those court cases. CGTN's Adel Mahroui has more details.
The fate of Libya's 24th December presidential election is now unclear. The Libyan Election Commission has failed to meet the deadline to announce its final list of candidates. It has also not given a specific time frame to finish that task. According to the initial plan, candidates should have had only 1 week to campaign. Now it's become almost impossible to hold the vote on time.
Unfortunately, the appeals against the presidential elections are many. These appeals have involved the judicial authority in this political race. Although it's a natural legal road, it has obstructed the vote. For this legal cycle to finish looking into these appeals, a lot of time is needed. The only beneficiaries of that are those who want to remain in power forcefully.
Appeals against the presidential vote began as soon as the Eastern-based parliament issued the election law. When the door opened for applications to vie in the polls, many factions began appealing against their rivals' candidature. So far, the Elections Commission has disqualified at least 25 politicians, including Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the son of Libya's former president Muammar Gaddafi.
I believe the laws regulating the vote are clear. However, people who are benefiting from them are not acting according to the law, and that's why this is causing confusion. For instance, the interim prime minister came to power through the UN based on certain rules, amongst them not to run for any leading positions. Yet he did. The elections committee dismissed his candidature, but he appealed against it.
Technically, Libya's election commission must wait until all of the country's 10 jurisdictions' courts reach a final verdict in the election-related appeals. Only then can it announce a final list of candidates. Meanwhile, 2.4 million voting cards have been distributed to eligible voters. After making the big announcement, the final nominees in Libya's first presidential election should be given some time to campaign. That could further boost an earlier initiative by the Western-based High Council for State. It wanted to hold the elections in February. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has refuted claims that new government warnings meant to curb the Omicron variant will put Britain into another lockdown. Johnson insists that despite fears about the rapid spread of the variant, the situation is under control due to widespread inoculation and testing. CGTN's Andrew Wilson reports.
The alarm call is officially out now, but the responses are still mixed. As village halls, community centres and even cathedrals give way to a small army of vaccinators, the public is now digesting the news that France has closed its borders to UK citizens. Here in Cheshire, it's not just the army helping out.
We've also got St John's Ambulance here today, and elsewhere in Cheshire we've got Cheshire Fire Service as well as our GPs and our hospital providers actually doing the vaccinations. But the military have been fantastic, so massive thanks to them.
In public, the government medical advisors are pushing as hard as they can now to put the brakes on Christmas.
This is a really serious threat at the moment. How big a threat? There are several things we don't know, but all the things that we do know are bad. And the principal one being the speed at which this is moving. It is moving at an absolutely phenomenal pace, and therefore between the time that it first starts to really take off in a way people will be able to see and the point when we get to very, very, very large numbers will be quite a short one, and that I think is part of the issue.
But the Prime Minister, hampered by the rebels in his party, is still taking a softer tone.
And of course, on behalf of the whole country, I want to thank our NHS, our GPs, our pharmacists, who with barely a day's notice, 48 hours notice, have so accelerated the programme that we began this week with the biggest vaccination Monday ever in England.
The controversial COVID passes are now in force. Checks outside this football match for vaccinations or negative tests. Despite the political fuss, the fans seem more relaxed.
I think it's good for general health, otherwise there wouldn't be any games at all.
It's got to be done, isn't it, at the moment, to be honest with you, the way things are and the way it's spiking at the moment. So, yeah, I'll go along with it, filled out the forms, done the double jabbed anyway, so it doesn't make much of a difference to me.
The medical authorities can barely contain their concern, but it seems there'll be no lockdown, not from this Prime Minister. So Britain will have its Christmas with crossed fingers, hoping for the best, but fearing something quite a bit worse. Andrew Wilson, CGTN.
With just a few days until schools break for the festive period, Spain has followed its European neighbour Italy and has begun a campaign to vaccinate children between 5 and 11. It is hoped this new initiative will help keep infection rates low. Rahul Pathak has more.
a new campaign for a country that has embraced the vaccination drive. What began 12 months ago with essential workers, the elderly and the most vulnerable has come full circle with the youngest members of the population next in line. Children aged 5 to 11 are now eligible, and the Health Ministry has recommended the oldest to go first. They will receive the Pfizer-BioNTech paediatric vaccine. Recent surveys have suggested that the uptake will be high. Around 3/4 of parents interviewed by pollsters Opinio were in favour of their children being vaccinated.
I would like to believe this is a good decision. We had our doubts, of course, but it's a gamble worth taking with the information that we have available to us now.
I did not doubt it for a single second. It was the same for adults, and now it's the kids' turn. They're one of the main spreaders of the virus. The infection rate keeps going up, so we need to vaccinate them.
Now, there has been pushback in some quarters, with a minority of parents questioning the need to vaccinate children who up until now have been largely resilient to the virus. And some experts have suggested there could be a fear of needles amongst younger children. But here in Madrid at least, the response has been largely positive.
It's important to vaccinate them because kids are a reservoir for the virus to spread. It's important because we can reach herd immunity by vaccinating children. After that, it will be important to vaccinate kids from birth up till 5 years old.
The European Medicines Agency approved the vaccination of children 5 and over last month, stating that the benefits of the programme far outweighed any potential risks to their health. Like adults, children will be given 2 jabs. They will be administered 2 months apart. Pedro Sanchez's government has said they hope this initiative will be a new international success for the country's vaccination campaign. It remains to be seen just how many children will get vaccinated, but the early signs are promising. Rahul Pathak, CGTN, Madrid.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Uganda uses drones to deliver HIV medication to remote locations.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Ethiopia,
Tanzania. Africa Live. Find your voice.
And turning to Uganda, a new program is using drones to deliver HIV drugs to a remote archipelago on Lake Victoria. Ashta Tal has more.
This is Kangala, an 84-island archipelago on Lake Victoria. Its location makes it difficult to deliver much-needed medication, in particular drugs used for the treatment of HIV. Kangala's population has a soaring HIV rate. About 27% of the island's population has the virus. Before, medication used to be delivered via boats, which presented its own challenge.
I personally have also been here in Kalangala for the last 4 years. Had also faced a lot of challenges to the point of almost drowning in water. So the drones project was actually brought to Kalangala to overcome the geographical challenges that are faced by the health workers together with the patients, mostly HIV positive patients.
The trial is being run by the Ugandan government's Infectious Diseases Institute, with funding coming from Johnson & Johnson. It looks to improve the transport of medical supplies for the country's health system.
Once we have gathered the data and analysed, we also then hope to use that to say whether we could set up a regular service around the islands to the whole of Kalangala district, or other places in Uganda or indeed East Africa which are difficult to reach, such as long distance areas with difficult terrain, maybe in West Nile district. We also are looking at other, putting other things in the drone. Because the drone lands, it can be loaded with samples. So maybe we can test for HIV viral load, maybe we can look at TB samples. We're also starting to look at COVID samples in the West Nile region.
The team also plans to see if in the future testing samples for tuberculosis and COVID samples can be sent via drones. Astatal, CGTN.
Aid agencies are calling for more support from international donors to try and mitigate the devastation brought about by flooding in parts of South Sudan. South Sudan has been facing widespread flooding since May, affecting large parts of the population and their livelihoods. Local officials say over 835,000 people were impacted by the flooding in 33 out of 78 counties as of the 8th of December. The states of Jonglei, Unity and Upper Nile remain the worst affected, with some 80% of the hardest hit people. The flooding has caused mass displacement, with thousands taking refuge on higher ground within their counties. The United Nations says the flooding has hampered people's access to essential services as homes, nutrition and health facilities, water sources, schools and markets remain submerged. Well, to shed more light on the impact of the floods in South Sudan, we earlier spoke to Annette Hearns, the Deputy Head of Office for the UN's Coordination Arm for Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, in South Sudan. Here is what she had to say.
At the moment, we have over 830,000 people across the country who've been reported as impacted as a result of this flooding. Now, these reports have started to come in since May. So those numbers, many of those people are impacted more than once as a result of this. Of the impact, we have 3 of the states that are more predominantly impacted than others. So that's Jonglei, Upper Nile, and Unity states. And the numbers of people impacted in just those 3 areas, that makes up for about 80% of this total. So we have about 300,000 people just in Jonglei state who are impacted as a result of this. Look, the response is ongoing and it is inadequate. Those people who are impacted, they need to eat every day. They need water every day. They need access to services. Imagine having your children who since May needed to get access to their education. It's an impossible task, but we're doing what we can. As the international community, we've served over 620,000 of those people impacted. But of course, there's other actors as well who are also providing support, including the community themselves. But it's an extraordinarily challenging and difficult environment. With the flood water and how it moves, you have roads that are impassable. So we can't even move our commodities anymore. We need to ensure that we have all of the different assets that are required in order to have that flood response. So we're relying more on air assets, we're relying more on moving commodities on boats. But of course, that's so much more expensive and we have less capacity to move that, the loads of cargo that then are required for the response. So we have a massively complex operation ongoing.
In Somalia, over 300,000 people are being affected by drought in Galgaduud region. Beyond drought, the region is also dealing with conflict. Fighting broke out between federal forces and a militia in the area. The UN says dozens have been killed and more than 100,000 displaced. The government declared a state of emergency in Galgaduud last month. Let's head to the Philippines, where a super typhoon Rai has hit on Thursday afternoon, with thousands of people seeking shelter from the strongest storm to hit the country this year. Gretchen Maladad reports from the capital, Manila.
Looks like it is the strongest typhoon to hit the country this year. Its strong winds has caused massive power outage in the Visayas region. Power lines and transmission lines have tripped off, so affected residents are now bracing from the typhoon in the dark. Authorities say it can take a few days before power outage can be restored. There have been also reports of massive flooding like the one in Cagayan de Oro in the southern Philippines, where the Philippine Coast Guard have been working hard to rescue residents. The water in the river have risen rapidly, causing heavy floods. The flood water is almost chest deep. So the Coast Guard used their rubber boats and ropes to rescue residents who were trapped in their homes. So one of those residents was an old lady who was shivering from the cold. Another one, the Coast Guard rescue, also rescued a 1-year-old child from a flooded house. So local governments thought that they were prepared and have placed most of the vulnerable residents in evacuation centers, but it seems like the sudden intensification of the typhoon, super typhoon Rai, has affected more areas. So far, there have been no reports of casualties from the super typhoon. So now the super typhoon is now moving westward. It's barreling several provinces and small islands in the central and western Visayas region. And tomorrow, December 17, it's expected to be in the area of the Palawan region. And the typhoon will exit the Philippines at 2 a.m. on December 19 on Sunday. It seems like it's headed to the path towards Vietnam, but will likely shift eastward to Hong Kong.
Well, let's now take a look at your business news. Here's Ramanya. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. International airlines flying into Ghana risk tens of thousands in fines per passenger for allowing vaccinated passengers on board. And Tanzania signed joint venture agreements with a range of Australian mining companies.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's start in West Africa. Authorities in Ghana will be fining airlines $3,500 for every passenger who arrives in the capital's international airport without proof of vaccination, a negative COVID PCR test, or who test positive on arrival. Ghanaian citizens, however, will be allowed to get into the country subject to a 14-day mandatory quarantine at a designated facility. These measures are just the latest taken by Ghana, which has introduced some of the strictest pandemic-related restrictions in West Africa. Authorities earlier this month did launch an enormous vaccination drive ahead of the enforcement from the 22nd of January next year, a vaccine mandate for targeted groups that includes government employees, health workers and students. The government plans to recruit more health workers to be able to double the daily inoculation rate as well. In East Africa, Tanzania's government has signed agreements with 4 mining companies to form joint ventures. Now, this move will see Africa's 4th largest gold exporter strengthen its control over the mining sector. The companies born out of these JVs will invest over $700 million in the process. Here's CGTN's Isaac Lukando with the details from Dar es Salaam.
4 mining companies have put ink to paper, partnering with the Tanzanian government to mine graphite, gold, diamonds and mineral sands in the country. With the potential to yield billions of dollars in profits, the government hopes this will grow the mining sector to 10% by 2025 from the current 6.7%. The country's president says giving Tanzanians a greater share in the country's mineral wealth is the end goal.
The question of adding value to our minerals is non-negotiable. There was a company that was to be part of this signing ceremony, but they rejected the clause requiring them to add value to minerals in the country before export, hence the delay.
In recent years, the Tanzanian government has sought to use joint venture companies to have greater control of the mining sector. It says achieving this has not been easy.
These agreements have been arrived at after various stages of negotiations, but I have to say it has not been easy. There were disagreements and at times we had to postpone talks to regroup. But where there is a will, there is a way.
In 2017, reforms to the mining sector saw the Tanzanian government begin to own 16% of all mining companies in the country and pocket half of the profits from their operations. A deal struck with Barrick Gold in January of 2020 ended a long-running tax dispute, marking a turning point in relations with mining companies that had soured as a result of the reforms. The government of Tanzania is hitting full throttle in its quest to exploit the country's mineral resources. This year alone, some 476 prospecting licenses have been given to various local and international mining companies in a bid to see the mining sector grow. Since March this year, the government says it has issued 20,000 mining licenses, but it is brushing off concerns that foreign investors might benefit at the expense of local miners.
About 11,574 licenses issued belong to small-scale miners in the country, and only 65 licenses belong to medium and large-scale miners. All this is happening because of the president's push to invite more investors to come in.
Tanzania made over $3 billion last year in gold exports alone. The government feels that with the signing of yet another set of mining agreements, it will edge closer to creating a wealthier future for its people. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Still in East Africa, let's head over to Uganda. The government over there has announced its intent to restrict the import of some of Kenya's raw and processed agricultural produce. That decision follows a close to year-long ban by Kenya on the import of poultry products from Uganda, among other long-standing trade disputes, one which includes sugar. Here's Leon Sonyange with the details from Kampala.
All lined up with nowhere to go. This is one of the farms at a standstill as the ban on the export of eggs and processed chicken by Kenya bites.
We have restrictions. We cannot even cross the borders as easy as it was before. So basically we are stuck with a small market.
Uganda produces over 3 million eggs per day. 70% of those are exported to Kenya alongside processed chicken. It is a delicate matter now for the over 50,000 farmers doing poultry in Uganda, stuck with millions of birds and eggs.
The ban has caused prices for Uganda goods to drop significantly while the operating costs remain high. Prices of eggs, in other words, chicks and processed chicken, have dropped, while costs in terms of feed and other operational costs remain extremely high.
The farmers say the sector's thriving commercial ability is now greatly at threat as they struggle to stay afloat. The government has acknowledged the poultry sector has indeed taken a big hit.
We have been very patient. We have behaved like ghetto people, but this has gone on for too long. So within a short time, the Minister of Agriculture would announce which products from Kenya are going to be restricted as a retaliatory measure.
Kenya is Uganda's biggest trade partner, exporting close to $700 million worth of goods. But the neighboring countries have had persistent trade disputes over commodities like sugar, milk, and maize grain. And now it's eggs and chicken at the center of the impasse between the two countries. The farmers here feel their government has taken long to act. Despite the lingering frustrations, there is optimism that better trade considerations can be arrived at sooner, lest the farmers will continue to count their losses. Leon Sonyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
On to Ethiopia. Headline inflation over there does continue to run pretty hot. The government says inflation rose to 33% in the last 3 months. Food price inflation is now approaching 40%. As Gurum Chalana reports from Addis Ababa, authorities say they are trying to implement different strategies in order to adapt.
Ethiopia continues to register double-digit inflation, and over the last 3 months alone, the inflation rate has hit a little over 33%. Food-related inflation has surpassed 38%. The Ethiopian government says there are some positive changes that have been recorded recently.
The 33% registered inflation rate over the last 1 month has seen a slight decrease compared to previous couple of months. Similarly, the food-related inflation over the last 1 month has been 38.9%, and this has also seen a 1.7% decrease compared to the last 3 months' data.
The double-digit inflation in Ethiopia has led to several economic challenges in people's day-to-day lives. Experts say the nation must do its level best to lower the current inflation to a single-digit level, and that requires decisive macroeconomic decisions, including slashing government spending.
Our main strategy to lower the inflation into a single digit is increasing domestic production. This will be seriously worked on in several sectors. Beyond the manufacturing sector, the agriculture sector is banked on to drastically increase domestic products. On the other hand, to elevate the burden of the people, the strategy of increasing commodities and goods supplies daily is being implemented. These are macroeconomic directions intended to minimize the effects of inflation.
The Communication Affairs Service has, on the other hand, said Ethiopia needs billions to reconstruct its war-torn regions and rehabilitate people who were affected by the conflict in the north. The more than 1-year-old war has undoubtedly burdened the Ethiopian economy, perhaps more than it was previously anticipated. And any prolonged conflict will only worsen the overall performance of the nation. Ethiopian authorities, however, are confident the economy will keep on being resilient. Gurum Chalana, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Let's head up north now. Tunisia's government is rolling out a project that aims to create decent jobs for young people in disadvantaged parts of the country. That program is being run in partnership with International Labour Organization and the European Union. Here's Adin Chouachi with the details from Tunis.
The director of the International Labour Organization ILO's North Africa office noted that the Tunisian government and its international partners consider the creation of decent jobs, in particular for young men and women in disadvantaged regions, as a central priority and engine of economic growth and development, as well as social peace.
The coronavirus pandemic has impacted the employment market, especially among youth. They're the most affected by this global crisis. The objective of this project is to promote the social and solidarity economy in Tunisia. This is a good alternative to unemployment. We train and finance youth so that they can realize their dreams by becoming successful business leaders and entrepreneurs.
Participants say the unemployment among young graduates, particularly in interior regions, is one of the main challenges facing the economy. In addition to the unemployment issue, there is a regional imbalance in terms of economic and social development.
I took part in the program with the project of valorizing and structuring plastic collection enterprises in my region. I have worked on improving the working conditions of disadvantaged workers. The program provided all the needs in terms of training and funding to face the challenges in Tunisia.
I have learned so much from this project. Our coaches and mentors will accompany all the participants until we succeed in implementing the social and solidarity economy projects in the inner regions of the country.
The European Union is one of the main partners in the Jeunesse project. In partnership with the Tunisian state, the EU also launched a support program for Tunisian youth, EU for Youth, aiming to contribute to the improvement of the economic and social inclusion of the most disadvantaged young Tunisians through a local development approach.
EU for Youth is a project with 60 million euros. It determines the needs of young women and men and pushes them to succeed in the business environment and boost Tunisia's economy. His process starts with an economic integration project by supporting ideas in the social and solidarity economy.
Tunisian authorities say that the Jeunesse program also promotes self-employment through individual or collective entrepreneurship.
Experts say that the social and solidarity economy is viewed by the Tunisian government and its social partners as a sector with an important potential for reducing social inequalities. It also promotes economic inclusion and creates jobs in the country. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
On to Nigeria now. 2 telecommunications firms over there have won licenses to roll out 5G services in a spectrum auction that was run by the Nigeria Communications Commission. Both MTN Nigeria and Mafam Communications have until February next year to pay the license fee of $273 million each. Deji Badimosi has the details from Lagos.
It took a long time before Nigeria could get to this stage of holding this auction session for the 3.5 gigahertz 5th generation technology spectrum, more commonly known as 5G. The deployment of the 5G network in the country had been trailed by conspiracy theories and health concerns. But after an extensive study and successful trial period last year, the government eventually approved the deployment of the technology, dismissing all the concerns and fears over the network.
World Health Organization and International Telecommunications Union, both critical institutions of the United Nations, issued their verdict confirming the safety of 5G and it doesn't have any adverse health effect. Looking at the general benefits of 5G deployment globally, like low latency, which is very clear, like high bandwidth, like long battery life, like network flexibility, network security, and many more, Nigeria as a country, being the giant of Africa, feels it is necessary for us to kickstart the process of 5G deployment.
3 telecoms firms took part in the bidding process, but at the end of the auction, it was MTN and relatively unknown Mafab Communications that emerged winners. For IT experts and advocates of 5G technology, this is the beginning of a revolution in Nigeria's digital space.
There's a great opportunity for various multi-sectorial growth on the back of this technology. So what I see is only positive things if we learn to adopt it over the next 6 to 8 years. I think initially it will be driven to the high net worth areas, and then eventually when NCC has stipulated, as they've done, that all states should be covered by 2025, 2026 and 2028, then it will be of mass market, and it will then be an opportunity for us to really prepare for 6G, as I said, but to really have benefited by adopting and producing a diversified knowledge-based economy on the back of 5G.
All things being equal, the technology will be rolled out fully next year, and Nigerians will be treated to high-speed internet and better connectivity.
I think the main important one here is that it gives an opportunity for telemedicine, immersive applications, and also, very importantly, to start to adopt certain artificial intelligence and data analytics for the security apparatus.
Nigeria is already the largest telecoms market in Africa, as well as having the largest internet subscribers and broadband network on the continent. It appears it is now only a matter of time before it becomes the country with the largest 5G rollout in Africa as well. Deji Badimosi, CGTN, Lagos.
I'll leave you there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. In global business, we'll be looking at the replenishment of the IDA. It's the World Bank fund, really, that tends to lend money onto some of the poorest economies on the planet. $93 billion is its capital injection. We'll look at where that money is going and how, of course, it was raised at the top of the hour. See you then. For now, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. Well, we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Senegal's national dish makes it to the Unesco Heritage List.
Join us in global business.
and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The United Nations Cultural Agency UNESCO has added Senegal's national dish to its cultural heritage list. Senegal's Culture Ministry applied to include the dish called Thiebo Dion on the UNESCO Heritage of Humanity list in October. CGTN's Joy Kiruki Juma reports.
The making of the Senegalese national dish. Thiebo Dion, a rice and fish platter. The dish is sometimes prepared with vegetables such as cassava or tomato and served at lunch.
I prepare Thiebo Dion with joy and enthusiasm. I'm a St. Louisian, and we all know that Thieb comes from St. Louis. That is why I always prepare it with pride. I prepare it every day.
The northern Senegalese city of St. Louis is believed to be where the dish originated. The old center of the city is itself a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It borders the Atlantic Ocean and hosts a thriving fishing community.
I really thank God. In Senegal, rice with fish has really become part of the eating habits. If this dish is recognized worldwide, it makes me very proud.
The dish is traditionally eaten with hands and is widely consumed in the West African country. The decision by UNESCO to recognize it has been received with gratitude.
If UNESCO decided to make it, it is a source of pride. It is also a way of paying tribute to our mothers who ensured that this rice was well prepared. It is a way of paying tribute to them.
It fills me with great pride for the Senegalese because rice with fish is native to Senegal. We are known worldwide for this dish. This is a victory for Senegal. I am very happy about it.
UNESCO has hailed the traditional passing down from generation to generation of the recipe and techniques of Thiebo Dion. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Well, let's now take a